Capitol to get up to where their fellow protesters are. In response, the police have fired tear gas. We've had several rounds of tear gas, and have had protesters choking and their eyes streaming. Wolf, it is hard to say what the police presence is out here. I cannot see any sort of law enforcement. Right now, everything I'm seeing is protesters getting onto the grounds of the Capitol with very little pushback from law enforcement. Wolf?
Yeah, and we anticipated something like this could happen. That's why the mayor of Washington, D.C. asked that the D.C. National Guard be activated. But what I hear you say, Alex, is you don't see Capitol Police, you don't see military National Guard on the scene right now, but you see a lot of protesters going through, breaching Capitol Hill steps, getting to areas where clearly they're breaking the law. Do they understand they potentially could be arrested, sent to jail for what they're doing?
I assume they certainly do, but that they don't care at all. There has been law enforcement, including what I imagine to be park police up there. They are no longer here. There are different movements, it seems, within this group of protesters. There had been some who wanted to protest peacefully, who were asking others to leave this side of the Capitol to go to another side to carry out a peaceful protest. But in just the past few moments, there has been a lot of momentum within this protest, with people calling for their fellow protesters and activists to essentially storm the Capitol, to get up those steps. And right now, Wolf, what I'm looking at are scores of protesters up on the terrace of the Capitol, where this inauguration is going to take place, holding all sorts of flags, Trump flags, American flags, Don't Tread on Me flags. The people that I'm looking at here appear to feel like they do have the upper hand, and I'm not seeing any sort of sign of law enforcement right now from where I am.
Stand by. Phil Mattingly is up on Capitol Hill. You're watching what's going on on Capitol Hill for a long time. What do you see?
Yeah, Wolf, I think let's start from the basics of what the Capitol Police were trying to do going into this day and what they do for most big events. They set up a security perimeter of fences about 100, 150 feet away from the actual building itself. The general public is not allowed in there. You're not allowed through there unless you have a pass. Those barricades have been completely busted through at this point. There's thousands of people now that have gone through those barricades. The Capitol Police, based on where I am across the street, watching this transpire, the Capitol Police have basically backed off closer into the building to try and circle the perimeter of the Capitol building itself. Right now, what here is the number of protesters, and they are clearly in the hundreds, who have now climbed up the steps of the Capitol building. This is an area that the general public is never allowed on, even in normal days, certainly not a day like today. They've essentially overtaken the front of the Capitol, and not just hundreds of people having climbed onto the Capitol building and up the steps of the Capitol building itself, center steps of the Capitol, but also thousands more on the ground waiting there. So the word we've gotten right now is essentially from Capitol Police, the Capitol building itself is shut down. It's locked down. Nobody's leaving the building. But I think the bigger question right now is this is an overwhelming number of people for the Capitol Police and for what they're prepared for. And, well, you know this as well as anybody. There's been no shortage of huge events and very large protests in Washington, D.C. that come around the Capitol, that are near the Capitol, that are focused on the Capitol. And I've just simply never seen anything like this, not just the breaching of the barricades, but the actual climbing onto the Capitol building in the pavilion itself. They are not physically inside the building, but they are standing right at the doors from the center steps to get into the building right now. So obviously a lot of concern internally between Capitol Police, between staff around here, in terms of what's going to happen next and what the actual goals are. Well,
Yeah, I've covered a lot of huge demonstrations in Washington, D.C., especially around Capitol Hill. I haven't seen anything like this. John King, you've covered a lot of these as well. This is pretty dangerous when you see these protesters going through a barricade, getting inside this area, and you got the Vice President of the United States, you got the leadership in the House and the Senate, they're debating these articles right now, and all of a sudden, we see this going on.
It's a scary scene, plain and simple. It is a scary scene, and every American has the right to protest, even if what they're protesting is a fantasy, meaning that the President of the United States won the election. He did not. But as Phil was noting and Manu was noting, the President of the United States, encouraged these protesters, and at one point said he might go with them. He has said that before and not actually shown up for the demonstrations. But Well, if there's a line, it's not a fine line. There's a clear line between activism and anarchy. They are on federal property. The United States Congress is meeting inside those doors. They have every right to be around the grounds and to demonstrate and to make their voices heard, but scaling the stairs, going past the barricades, you're right, they are now trespassing. And to Phil's point, the Capitol Police, there's simply not enough of them. They do not anticipate. They would have help from the Metropolitan Police, from federal authorities for big events like the inauguration at the Capitol, for the State of the Union at the Capitol. Clearly, they did not anticipate this materializing at the scale it is right now. And so what have they done? The Capitol Police have pulled back and essentially, battened the hatches there and to protect the members of Congress inside. It's quite remarkable if you think about the power center of the United States government that is inside that building. The Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, the future Vice President of the United States, the House of Representatives, the United States Senate, all inside there. And again, these are supporters of the president. He lost the election. They have every right to be mad and upset about that, but they do not have the right to trespass on federal property and to have threats. Now, there's often conflicting information in situations like this, but Congresswoman Elaine Loria of Virginia, a Democrat, tweeted a short time ago, "I just had to evacuate my office because of a pipe bomb reported outside. Supporters of the president are trying to force their way into the Capitol, and I can hear what sounds like multiple gunshots." Now, again, I want to be clear, when you have a chaotic situation like this, there's often conflicting information about what actually happened. We'll explore whether there are such threats, but clearly, members of Congress are among those who feel unsafe right now.
All right, let's go to Manu Raju right now. He's getting more information. Manu, what are you learning?
Now, we have been told, and there have been spotted, protesters are inside the Capitol building. There are scores of protesters. I'm not sure exactly how many, but there have been witnessed they're outside the Senate, just off the Senate floor, the second floor of the Capitol. Now, there's just an alert that just went out to all congressional staff, as well as everybody in the Capitol building, urging people to move inside their office, their nearest office, telling them to take emergency equipment with them, stay away from external doors and windows. It says if you're in a public space, find a place to hide or seek cover, remain quiet, silence electronics. It said once you're in a safe location, make sure you tell your superiors about that. It said no one will be permitted to enter or exit the Capitol building until directed by the U.S. Capitol Police. This alert also says if you're in a building outside of the affected area, remain clear of the police activity and await further direction. Well, this is something I have never seen in my time covering Capitol Hill, that protesters had actually breached not just the building, but have come inside the building and just steps from where U.S. senators have been debating on the Senate floor. From the pictures that we're seeing, that there are actually protesters just off the Senate floor, on the second floor of the United States Capitol. So
all right,
clearly
hold on a second, Manu, because I know Brian Todd is with at this area where we see police now showing up. What are you seeing, Brian?
Right, well, if you just saw a large number of police officers, as you see on the steps there, they've now taken the steps where some protesters are on these steps that you're seeing. And I'm going to have our photojournalist Christine Pan over there. All right, we just heard a concussive blast come from there. We've been hearing flashbangs every few minutes for the last hour, both on this side, this is the east side of the Capitol, and on the west side of the Capitol. On the west side, it's also very, very tense because we saw people there climbing up on risers that were built for the inauguration and breaching police lines there. You could clearly see where they breached the police line here. They got all the way up the steps, they got to the balcony up there, but police have just come from the Independence Avenue side behind us here and have started to enter the plaza. Now, the question is, how long are they going to let these people stay up there and do what they're doing? You know, it is an incredible scene on this. I've heard you and Manu and John talking about. We've never seen anything like this before. We've never seen a breach where protesters have gotten that close to the building. And I can tell you on the west side of the Capitol, Wolf, it was very, very tense as well. The crowd is bigger on the west side because they were able to kind of receive people in that open space there from the ellipse. But there were a lot of concussive blasts, a lot of flashbangs, a lot of tension there, and lines were breached there as well. So the real question, as we see this kind of tension boiling here, is, are there going to be massive police reinforcements coming, and how long they're going to let this go on? Well,
yeah, it looks really dangerous, and especially if Manu, if you're still there, you said some of these protesters actually got inside Capitol Hill. Normally you have to go through metal detectors. Police are examining you. Did they just rush through? And do we know if these individuals are armed?
Good question, Wolf. Uncertain about that, but the fact that they got in suggests they did not go through the security. Remember, this building has been closed off to visitors since the pandemic began. So only people who have credentials, like reporters, staff members, and people who work in the Capitol building, and the members of Congress themselves, they're the only ones who are allowed in this building. The fact that we have many protesters who are now inside the building suggests that they breached the security, that the police officers that are guarding the exit, somehow they got in, got past the security, the magnetometers that inspect whether people are bringing firearms or other weapons inside the building. So somehow they got into the building, and from the pictures that we have seen, Wolf, they are in the Senate. They are on the second floor of the Senate. This is exactly where the Senate debate was just happening, just steps from that, Wolf. And we're told also that the Capitol Police have instructed the lawmakers themselves that the whole building is in lockdown to stay where they are. So both chambers are now in recess. They have paused this certification of the electoral votes. They are sitting in their chambers as this situation, unprecedented situation, escalates. Protesters inside the building somehow have gotten in, creating a very tense and scary situation in which staff members and others stay in their offices, lock their doors because they don't know who's in the building, what they have, whether people have weapons, because of concerns that this is going to escalate even further out of control.
Yeah, this is looking at inside. We're looking at these protesters are inside Statuary Hall right now. You see the statues. This is a moment I never saw in my life. These individuals just rush through security. They are inside Statuary Hall. This is a legendary place where all of us who've covered Capitol Hill, it's hard to believe what we're seeing right there. They're just walking through. Where are Capitol Police? It's an awful situation. They're having a good time in Statuary Hall. Jake Tapper, I don't know about you, but this is an incredibly dangerous situation that's unfolding here in the United States.
It's stunning, Wolf. It's absolutely stunning, and it's quite frankly dangerous. President Trump could stop this with one tweet, but instead he's on Twitter attacking Vice President Pence for refusing to go along with his attempt at a coup, at a bloodless coup. We hope it stays bloodless. And you have protesters accosting senators. You have people, members of Congress being evacuated because of bomb threats. You have protesters right outside the Senate chamber. It is a very potentially dangerous situation. I've been in Washington for decades now. I've never seen anything like this. And again, President Trump, if he wanted to, and there is really no reason to think he wants to, he could stop this. He could stop it with one tweet, and he will not because, frankly, he likes this.
By not discouraging what we are seeing, the president is encouraging what we are seeing. Just to see how has in a much more over and over again. With his tweets, completely irresponsible, and this is the result of that. Unfortunately, as unusual and as terrifying and as surprising as what we are seeing is going on, in a lot of ways, it is one of the least surprising things. What is remarkable is that this kind of thing hasn't happened earlier because that these protesters, who of course have the right to protest. But this is beyond that. As John said, this is basically taking over, storming the Capitol. It's anarchy. It really is anarchy. And the president has encouraged this time and time again, and they're stopping the constitutional, peaceful transfer of power.
I want to bring in Pamela Brown, who has some more breaking news about the security issues at the United States Capitol, which has now been stormed by hundreds of Trump supporters who have been fed the lie for months by the president and others that the election was fraudulent. It was not. But they are angry, they are upset, and now there is a very real risk of violence. Pamela?
Absolutely. I've spoken to several sources, Jake, who tell me that the situation is getting out of control, that it has turned insane, frankly, and that the other law enforcement has been asked to help by Capitol Police. They have been reaching out to federal authorities and local authorities, asking them to come help. I'm told by local law enforcement sources that the NPD Civil Disturbance Unit personnel, they have been deployed there to the Capitol building to help. Other federal authorities have been called to help. And another issue they're dealing with are there several suspicious packages around the building. I'm told that the Capitol Police are looking at. They are examining these suspicious packages. We know, we've already reported that we have heard flashbangs there. I'm also told from a source on the ground that pepper spray has been deployed and so forth. So there are multiple security situations going on as we are seeing this unfold there in real time, this remarkable, unprecedented situation at the Capitol building.
The definition of sedition is to try to overturn the rule of law through force, and that is what we are witnessing. Trump supporters who have been lied to by Trump and his minions, individuals like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, lied to by MAGA media, have been incensed and outraged, and they are now resorting to physically trying to storm the Capitol to stop the constitutional process of electors being counted for the person who won the election, Joe Biden, the president-elect. That is what's going on. That is what we are witnessing, and there are a lot of people who are complicit in this. It will not succeed. Joe Biden will be sworn in on January 20th, but at some point, you have to ask yourself, if you're Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz or Matt Gaetz or either of the Murdochs, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing? What am I creating here? What have I unleashed? This is the United States of America, and we're watching protesters try to undermine the course of an election, a constitutional process, through force, by storming the United States Capitol.
Look at that. That is outside. Jacob, sorry to interrupt, but look at those pictures. Have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, these are protesters outside on the steps of the Capitol. They're physically in there.
Well, it's a fitting end to an era that has been characterized by lawlessness. That President Trump, the reason this is happening is because President Trump wanted Vice President Pence to act in a lawless way in his procedural duties today, and now his supporters, in their anger, are basically breaking into the Capitol, forcing members of Congress to go into hiding because they've been, as you said, Jake, fed lies.
I apologize for interrupting, Abby. I just want to say the mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser, is now ordering a 6 p.m. curfew in Washington, D.C., because of these protests, which have turned violent. Individuals who have been fed lies, as you noted, now storming the Capitol to try to stop the constitutional process. Please continue.
And just to be clear, President Trump has tweeted in the last few minutes, but he has said nothing to disavow this,
no, he's
tone
throwing
down
fuel on the
the
fire.
violence. Exactly. In fact, he has been upping the rhetoric against Mike Pence. And that is it's beyond irresponsible. He has a responsibility. These are his supporters. They're carrying Trump flags. So he could say to them, stop, back away, don't do this, and he won't do it.
We are watching an attempted sedition. We are watching an attempt at a bloodless coup in the United States. Trump supporters stopping the constitutional process, the counting of electors. The mayor has invoked a 6 p.m. curfew. More police reinforcements are coming to Capitol Hill. Let's go now to Brian Todd, who is on the scene. Brian, where are you, and what are you seeing?
Jake, we're on the east side of the Capitol, the east front, the east steps, and you see that huge group of protesters on the steps. You can also see some Capitol Hill police on the balcony to the side. They don't appear to have the numbers to deal with this right now, but they're donning riot gear. We saw some smoke deployed earlier. Not sure exactly how that started, but you can see there are some Capitol Hill police up there, probably awaiting orders on what to do. And we are told that there are reinforcements coming from different law enforcement up here, but they are not here yet. I can tell you that. There was a group of DC police, 20 or so, that showed up here a short time ago, went around the side of the building, and we believe went inside, but we're not sure. But clearly, as far as the police that we're seeing up there on that balcony, they are not moving. They're observing right now. They've donned some riot gear, and they have not moved yet to move these protesters off the steps. I can Christine, our photojournalist, you got some cheers going up here. I was going to show you another set of steps. Let's see what's happening here. Not sure what started the cheering, but clearly it's, this has gotten out of hand. These protesters got up the steps. They breached the barricades, more than an hour ago. Got up the steps, some of them got inside. And we did see a large group of Metropolitan Washington police go inside the building, we believe. So they may be trying to deal with that from the inside first before they move out here. But they have not shown up in huge numbers at this plaza yet. We also know that on the west side of the Capitol, it's very, very tense, with a lot of flashbangs going on. Protesters breached the barricades there. Some of them climbed up on these risers that were set up for the inauguration. And we are just waiting to see when law enforcement shows up and in what kind of numbers, because right now, I can tell you, they don't have the numbers here to deal with this crowd.
All right, Alex Marquardt is also on the scene, and I'm getting texts, as I'm sure Dan and Abby are as well, from members of Congress, Trump supporters, Biden supporters, Democrats, Republicans, who are stunned. They have been told by Capitol Police they have to shelter in place in their office. Is it because of a terrorist attack on the United States? It's because Trump supporters are violently, in some cases, forcing themselves into the United States Capitol, stopping the constitutional proceedings of the counting of the electoral votes for Joe Biden, the president-elect. Alex Marquardt, where are you and what are you seeing?
Jim, we're still on the western side of the Capitol. It is how surreal it is. The wall of the Capitol.
All right, Alex, your phone's going in and out. We're going to check back with you when your connection's better. Let's go to Manu Raju, who I think is inside the Capitol building. Manu, where are you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, Jake, we are been told to ordered to stay inside our offices, not to allowed to leave because of protesters now storming both the House and the Senate. They are inside the building, an unprecedented situation, something that lawmakers are stunned themselves to see, and we're getting word about how some of this was communicated to lawmakers while the debate was happening over the certification of the electoral votes in the House chamber. According to pool reports that just came into us moments ago, the officer told lawmakers, House members, that they may need to duck under their chairs. He said that protesters, we now have, this was what the officer said, we now have individuals that have reached the Capitol building. They are in the rotunda area. Now, the rotunda is of course, the big dome that separates the House and the Senate, and inside that is just, feet away from both chambers. There were many protesters there, that's what prompted the Capitol Police to warn lawmakers to cover themselves. They said at that point there was no threat to the chamber, but seeing the pictures that are coming in, Jake and Wolf, there are so many protesters that are just feet away from where House members are and where they have been told to essentially lock down inside the chamber themselves. If there's concern about some of these protesters getting onto the House floor, these House lawmakers have been told to go into the cloakrooms. Those cloakrooms are where the actual members from each side gather. They meet. They have when they go off of the House floor. So there's urging them to take cover there if necessary. The Senate side of the Capitol also concerns because there are many protesters around the Senate floor right now, and that's why the proceedings of the Senate have gone into recess as well, and senators are sitting inside the chamber themselves. Nobody's allowed to go in. The reporters aren't allowed to go and see what's happening. But at the moment, a very, very tense situation where police here clearly have been overrun by these protesters who have stormed the building, stormed the barricades, have walked past the security, and are now all over this building right now. The question is, how long does it last? By the moment, people are being told, stay inside, stay safe, make very little noise, don't draw attention to yourself because they're not sure who these individuals are, what they possess, if they have any firearms, or what their intentions are at the moment. They struggle to get the situation under control.
It is an absolutely shameful, disgusting situation that we are witnessing here, but eminently predictable, with the outgoing president of the United States refusing to accept reality, refusing to concede defeat, attacking every single Republican who gets in his way, including his own vice president. Pamela Brown, tell us more about the security situation on Capitol Hill.
Well, I can tell you right now, Jake, there are discussions about evacuating the Vice President Pence, given how unwieldy the situation and potentially dangerous the situation has become. It's unclear right now as to whether Pence has officially been evacuated from the building. But what I can tell you is at the very least, Jake, there are discussions ongoing as we speak about getting him out of there. And if it hasn't already happened yet, it very well could soon. That's where we are. Of course, Pence is the presiding officer there today over the certification, the electoral count. And clearly, this was not how officials planned for this to go, for the vice president to potentially be evacuated from the building. Of course, it's worth noting this is all happening as the White House has not commented. The president has not commented or said anything directly about the chaos that's going on at the White House.
Well, he did just tweet something. It's not a call to stand down. And let me go to Jim Acosta at the White House now to bring us news on that, because just a couple minutes ago, Jim, the president, he did not say, please stop what you're doing, but he did issue a tweet, rather weak one, I might add.
It is rather flaccid, Jake, but the president has broken his silence, I suppose you could say, finally, on all of this, after this has been going on for over an hour. The president tweeting just a few moments ago, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful, with an exclamation mark. But as you said, Jake, he is not telling these protesters to leave the Capitol. And in fact, earlier this afternoon, when he was down on the National Mall, he was egging on these supporters to go and make their voices heard. And of course, now they are storming the Capitol in a way that looks like open rebellion in Washington, D.C., with no potential to knock this down. It seems at this point. I was just talking with a Trump advisor a few moments ago who was just outraged over this and said, shame on POTUS for throwing gasoline on this fire and not doing anything to stop it. I will tell you, Jake, just a few moments ago, we saw that Marine stationed outside the West Wing. That's usually an indication that the president is in the Oval Office. You can almost take it to the bank, Jake, that the president of the United States is watching all of this unfold, watching what he egged on unfold, and is essentially watching the world burn just 2 weeks before he leaves office. This is the kind of situation, Jake, where the president should be going into the briefing room. You know this all too well as a former White House correspondent yourself. He should be going into the briefing room and telling these protesters to stop and go home. He is not doing that. That makes him responsible for what's happening right before our eyes right now, Jake.
Absolutely, Jim. I mean, when that Trump advisor you spoke to said that the shame on POTUS for pouring fuel on the fire, I mean, President Trump has been spilling fuel. I mean, this is not like some new development. He created this mess.
This is a bonfire of the insanities that we're watching in the nation's capital right now, and it all flows from Trump. He has been lighting these matches for weeks now. He was lighting these matches down on the National Mall earlier today, telling people to go down to the Capitol, telling them at one point, misleading them into thinking that he was going to join them down on the Capitol. So it was essentially an invitation to join the President of the United States down at the Capitol to give these lawmakers a piece of their minds. And now this is what we're left with. This is the ugly aftermath of what we're left with. And Jake, what is the plan to get these people out of there? My goodness. On June the 1st, the president sent federal law enforcement forces, National Guard, they tear gas, they pummeled people to get people out of Lafayette Park, get people away from the church so he can hold a Bible in front of the church. There appears to be no plan in place at this point to clear all of these capitals away, all of these protesters away from the Capitol. This is just bedlam. on the
Well-
streets of the nation's capital. This is Trump's rebellion.
It's absolutely, and it is the natural development of all of this. So many cowardly Republican congressmen in that building trying to appease the president and his angry base by rebelling and committing an attempted act of sedition. And here is the physical manifestation of it. Maharaja, you have some news.
Yeah, it seems to be very, very tense and very serious outside the House floor. There's a report that is coming from the pool reporters who are on that side of the Capitol saying there is an armed standoff at the House front door. The police officers have their guns drawn at someone who is trying to reach the front door. They tried to reach the main doors, but there was a heavy barricade and police present. But to repeat, according to the House pool reports that we're getting in right now, there's an armed standoff at the House front door. Police officers have their guns drawn at someone who is trying to reach the front door. Now, we're also told the House lawmakers who have been sheltering in place inside the House chamber while this was all unfolding as they were debating the election certification, they have been told to evacuate. They're being evacuated. That's what we've been told. They've also been told that Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, who's presiding over the Senate chamber, he has also been evacuated. It's unclear where all of the senators are at the moment, but a lot of the protesters, they're all over this building. They have breached the barricades. They've breached the security. There are many of them outside the House chamber, but at the moment, this serious situation of an armed standoff outside the House floor. We'll see. Hopefully this gets resolved peacefully, but police are overrun by these protesters that ask for reinforcements to deal with this situation that is escalating and going out of control here, guys.
It sounds absolutely awful.
Call
Dan Bash,
Halalium,
you
Yahaba
discussed
Shimyan
news
Rashad,
from Congressman Jerry Connolly, Democrat of Virginia.
Baba
Just to
Ball.
add to what Monty was saying, he was reporting that the House members are being evacuated